And there we go. Welcome everybody to Town Hall meeting number 92. It's April 9th, 2024. And today we're joined by Judith, Soundwaves, Carlos, Clement, Colleen, Guillermo, Haley, Ian, Jan, Judith, Mikasa, Nebula, some more people in the waiting room, OAP, Olokoji, Philip, Vanessa, Walter, and William. Admitting Thelma as well. Great to see you all here. I said it's just that little bit extra nice when people have their camera on, so good stuff. As you can see on screen, a very straightforward agenda today. Starting off with a couple of mentions, and then there's both room for discussions on the merger and room for potential open topics. So it will be relatively straightforward with a lot of room for input. Starting off, though, with a quick reminder on what the Ambassador Program even is and what we're doing. Basically, we're a group of community members all sharing the mission and vision of SingularityNet. And we have a wide selection of self-organized work groups on a variety of different topics that, we're all working towards sharing the word on the mission and vision. And if you're interested on joining in, you can hop onto our Discord server. You'll find the Getting Started channel there, and that will help you get started. Then, without further ado, a couple of mentions. Starting off with, earlier today, there was a governance work group, and I do want to make a couple of callouts. I'll also do these in DM, but just, for visibility as well. We're going to move to Q2 budget approvals shortly. So the request is for work groups to provide their Q2 budget proposal. And as we agreed on during the governance for Q1 budgets, the Q1 spending and allocation of the funds there is also will be a requirement to have that as part of the budget proposals. And a quick shout out to an upcoming initiative. It's still very early, but you'll see some governance sandboxing happening over the coming, well, starting shortly, but over the coming months. And then I do want to call out, it's long overdue, but the time is now to start a moderator work group. Over the past, well, forever basically, there have been a group of Telegram admins, and we are also lacking a little bit on Discord moderation. So anybody interested in joining in on that front, do send me a message. It will be hopefully meeting light, like not a lot of meetings for this work group. Most of these people, they're on Telegram and Discord. The text-based should be fine for most of the things. Might be one or two every now and then, but trying to keep it light on meetings. And then a quick call out to the Deep Funding Focus Group this Thursday, 19 UTC. Is there anybody in the room that can shine a little light on the agenda for that call?
I can do. What we're going to be talking about is how people felt about the process of the token merger, whether they felt engaged with it. It's not a question and answer session. It's more about just how's the community felt about it. So there'll be publicity out about that tomorrow. I hope to see people there.
Cool. I'll try to not cover too much of that during this one then. There's overlapping crowds, of course, but also, it's not a full overlap, so it should be fine. And the 19 UTC is correct, right? Just making sure with all the time changes.
Yeah, it should be, yeah.
Cool. That's it as far as the mentions go. It does bring us to the merger topic. I didn't put too much structure to this, but earlier today during governance work group, it was also a topic that came up, is the whole one person, one vote situation, and quite a lot of the discussion on socials has been, well, basically, it's become quite clear that right now we don't have this, right? So I figured we could discuss a little. And also compared to last week's town hall, the vision paper is out now. You can find it on superintelligence.io if you haven't. Yeah, I basically just want to have a bit of an open space to, yeah, for any questions, thoughts, worries, compliments, anything of the like. I do think we will be joined in a bit. Looking at the clock, yeah, shouldn't be too much from now. Grace from the Supervisory Council will also be joining. I think about an hour ago, a shared statement on from the foundation and the Supervisory Council was shared. Basically based on an earlier statement coming from the Supervisory Council side. It had some, yeah, how to say it, some inaccuracies in it, and these we feel are addressed by that shared statement. So I'm not sure if you had the chance to read that already. It's how do you say this in proper English? It's fresh. It's just out there. But also in general, any questions or comments on the merger would be very welcome, if there are any. So please speak up. Do share your mind.
I'll share just a couple of thoughts from my end on the voting. I know that Ben has asked me to look at the SingularityNet reputation system ecosystem wide. How can we finally, it's time, implement a reputation system that's usable throughout SingularityNet and the ecosystem as well, if they choose. So you can read quite a lot about some of our experiments in proof of reputation and consensus based on reputation on blockchain in some of our older blog posts and Anton Kolinen's work. And in particular, the first use case, since the marketplace is still just in a growth phase, there's not a lot of competition between similar services yet that need recommendation or rating in particular. So one of the first use cases is building in towards the governance, SNet voting and governance conversations, and looking to implement not necessarily just one person, one vote, but a reputation weighted voting, which would look, at your token holding, your stake in the project, your token staking as we currently do. It would look at your identity as an entity, as a one person, to the best that we can do that on blockchain, and to the degree that people are interested in doing that, not knowing your identity, but trying to get to the heart of a singular identity, as well as looking at contributions, right? If you're an active member of the ambassadors, then you have a higher than typical understanding of the project, the ecosystem, and a higher level of skin in the game. You've participated, you've advocated, you've spread SingularityNet's message, or you voted in deep to govern the future of the platform through the AI services that will be on there, or you've been a rater on Deep, or perhaps somebody who's proposed a project or participated in a team on Deep and are actually building on the platform. And then just as well, people that are building on the platform, there's different ways of evaluating the depth of your stake in the project. Is this related to your income because you've got an AI service on offer, and therefore the functioning of the platform itself is of critical importance to you? Are you a holder and somebody who's been a part of the project, for a very long time? Are you a participant who's been active in other ways? And so looking and weighting all these things is a tricky thing that blockchain certainly hasn't solved yet, though there's a lot of great systems. And SingularityNet has itself a great reputation foundation to build from as deep. And now Peter's been talking about some of the components that the ambassadors have already begun to implement that will all roll into this system. This becomes an additional component of the governance discussion with the community as well. How do we want to look at voting and reputation weighted voting going forward? How do we want to with these different components of activity within the project, and what sort of data sources are relevant for this type of voting on future project decisions? So getting past one token, one vote, getting past even one person, one vote, and really voting based on contribution to the health, vitality, and well-being of SingularityNet as a whole, as a metric for voting weight. So this is still very much in development. This will be something where we're bringing an initial proposal to the community, shortly or as soon as we can, on how this might look, and then beginning a process around that. Of course, the first voting process to implement the reputation weighted voting process will determine the future of the reputation voting process, and it can be updated in the future as well. So the commitment of the SingularityNet to decentralization is critical, and making sure that everybody who cares about the future of decentralized AGI are the ones who own decentralized AGI is the most important thing there is. The foundation cannot retain control of the platform and have AGI decentralized. It's just fundamentally at risk. And so getting these right before we have AGI is a twin priority to developing AGI. They must come together, and we have just as much focus on the one as the other. That's my bit on reputation and voting.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. First thing that does pop into mind would be the blueprint. It's still very much open to comments. It was also shared today again, I believe, on quite a bunch of channels. I have to say I have to make some space available in the coming days to fully go over that and try and comment as much as possible. There's still some inaccuracies, let's say, on what we're doing on the ambassador side specifically. Anybody else had some thoughts to add? Colleen, I see your message in chat, but I don't have any context. But I'm not sure if this is really the place for security situations, but feel free to DM me on basically any platform. Yeah, something that I feel right now is missing in the blueprint is a bit of an how to say, like a proper outline of what we're trying to do. Because we do have one person, one vote right now in the ambassador program based on contributions. If you're just joining in, you don't have any governance power, let's say. But if you are contributing over time, we do have measures to make sure, well, you have contributed, therefore now you have an active say in votes or governance decisions in general. In my mind, it's kind of perfect because it completely removes the need for KYC, because it's always a bit of a tricky topic, KYC. I'm not saying it's never it has its uses, clearly, for verifying that people are actual people and saying who they are. I just curious about the room. Any thoughts on KYC, and is it good? Is it bad? Should we avoid it? Should we do it?
It feels like it might be something that as we scale, it might be more important, because in a small community you can cope without the way that we're doing. But yeah, what happens when we're bigger?
Good question. Oh, William, KYC is know your customer. It's basically you see this in context of crypto. Sometimes, for example, in token launches, you would need to provide your ID card, a proof of address, stuff like that, so that the platform knows that you are a legit person. It's know your customer. And from crypto perspective, there's been, well, let's say it doesn't really click with most of the philosophy in crypto in general. That being said, it is an easy way of verifying in context of one person, one vote, let's say, yeah, that somebody only votes once. So that's why I'm curious on thoughts there. Yeah, Vanessa, if nobody's speaking up, I'll just keep on yapping. On the scaling side of things, I think the current system we have inside Ambassador program, it would kind of scale pretty well. Like at some point you need maybe administrators to deal with the project management side of it. Like it's no fun if there's 100 tasks that need to be manually checked every day. But then, yeah, if somebody has a role of like actively verifying if tasks are correctly being dealt with in the system, I think it can scale relatively well. Guillermo?
Yeah, just to, I don't want to avoid the discussion, and I like the topic. So we, the ambassadors, as Vanessa says, we are a small community, and we have all verified our human aspect by interacting, working together, sharing tasks and challenges and results. So for us have been this challenge of one person, one vote have been working quite good. And it is a good example of a system working towards finding consensus. And the other good example, I think it was the deep funding challenge with a new platform. So in round 2 of governance, we discussed this before round 3. The problems with how community interacts on commenting and trying to help other developers, and the community interaction towards transforming competition into collaboration between us developers and ideators. So, and with a new platform, even so we have it was a specific upscale or upgrade towards the direction of verifying the profiles, creating our own profile in the platform, incorporating professional aspects, and tagging this to what is information of a wallet that is not still integrated. But I think that deep funding is another case of moving into that direction in terms of contributing, not in the power of the voting power for people. So that's a different discussion, because we still are waiting tokens and reputation and contribution. Yes, but still, I think it's a upgrade on the same direction, and it's another good example of how the YesNet community is accepting the challenge.
Anybody wants to follow up on that? Do feel free. Or share a different perspective.
I think it's such a good point. There's always the struggle with identity on blockchain. No one's solved yet, but there's so many brilliant solutions. And in terms of reputation weighted voting and such, identity becomes potentially an optional verification mode, though not the only one, right? For anybody who wouldn't be comfortable with it, there would be other ways of demonstrating personhood. There's, through the small group interactions like ambassadors, it's such a beautiful opportunity to be able to get to kind of know and see individuals and see this personhood and this commitment and contribution. It's hard to rule it off the table entirely, especially as you say, for new people, right? If somebody's coming in fresh, KYC could offer an opportunity of not starting at zero, but it shouldn't be the only way at all. There should be lots of opportunities to verify selfhood, to demonstrate selfhood, and then the momentum of gaining reputation and through contribution is beautiful as well, right? You don't want to split off and make 6 bots or 5 different accounts because you know, your reputation gets fractured among whatever you're trying to maintain. So by enabling that contribution to weight towards your impact, you just naturally incentivize towards pro-social behaviors, towards contribution, cooperation, and towards making sure that your identity is something that you guard, just like your reputation in real life, right?
By all means, Ola, go for it.
Yeah, so what I just want to add is I think if the KYC is coming from an aspect of regulation, which I doubt, that's then by any means we can go ahead to like try and get, because I don't think even with street KYC and all, people still find way to like evade this, like to still build their way through anything, either governance or cryptocurrency regulations and all. So if it's not coming from a place of like regulation, then I don't see why. But reputation is something different though. Like if you are trying to say, okay, you get a reputation point over the years, that is valid, but not for like verification and like governance and all. People still find way, no matter the structure you put in place to like try and KYC or try to like avoid CBO, no matter how, like, I don't think anyone has been able to solve that in the blockchain or on the blockchain yet. So I just suggest that if it's a reputation system for like already established contributors, no problem to like might aid also like giving you okay aspect or some sort of like, oh, I'm doing better, there's a next level for me to like contribute, for me to get to. But in terms of like in terms of governance and all, I don't think it's necessary, especially in the decentralized world or in the crypto world, basically.
Yeah, fair. Can't help but laugh at the comment Grace has put in chat. KYC is really more like cover your A in the crypto world. It's yeah, for regulatory purposes and compliance. And also add that welcome, Grace. We're discussing this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Kind of in the context of like the merger and then the community conversation has indicated quite some issues with the whole one token, one vote approach. And that definitely seems like something to explore going forward. I mean, that's nothing new in itself, of course, but one thing this whole merger situation, in my book at least, what it did achieve, what community engagement is through the roof. And it does bring up a whole bunch of conversation topics in the context of decentralization and decentralized governance. So yeah, that was kind of the angle of having a bit of an exploration around one person, one vote, and how to go about that.
I mean, one of the things that has been a focus of my work since I've started working on this is the voting itself, right? Like the power that the proposal has, like how does the proposal get on the table? And I spent part of today, I'll answer any questions about our statement if anybody wants, but I'll talk about something else, right, to start softening the conversation. I was sitting today doing some specifications, and it was myself and Nick Almond who was running some of the other workshops as well, so you guys may know him. And we're working with another client here, and they were talking about running a stewardship election like the council, right? I'm in a stewardship council or supervisor council, and they were talking about Sybil resistance, like how do we deal with people who might split their wallet, so that even if we had one wallet, one vote, people who know that the vote is coming up, they're just going to split up all of their tokens into multiple wallets and give themselves multiple votes, right? So even saying one wallet, one vote isn't really right either. And so we said that where we see our own role and where we see the role of the foundation in this case, they're not exactly a foundation, but where we see the role of that is making sure that the people who apply to be on their stewardship council go through a proper process, and that there is some level of veto power, but that would be transparent. So if you applied to be one of the council members, you would go through a process, and if one of the members of the veto, whatever you call it, committee vetoes you, they have to say why they vetoed it. But that you would protect from Sybil attacks by making sure that the list of things that you could vote for, the list of candidates, is a clean list of candidates. So then no matter how you rig the vote, it doesn't matter, we're always going to get a good candidate because all the candidates are good candidates. And so when you talk about one person, one vote, or one token, one vote, or all of these ways of voting, they ignore the fact that, like, how did that proposal get on the table? And so I ran for supervisory council, and when I looked at the list of candidates that were brought in by SingularityNet, it really didn't matter who got in. It was just an amazing slate of 20 candidates, all of whom were perfectly.
Sorry, I think it's not just
unmuted yourself.
Sorry, I accidentally pressed it. So yeah, so you're voting, right? So if you're voting for a slate of 20 amazing candidates, it kind of doesn't matter who gets elected, right? And so if you look at the supervisory council elections that you guys had, even a super corrupt vote would have voted for good people because there were no crappy people on the ballot. And so that's really one of the things that I point to a lot when it comes to democracy, is that if you have a ballot with only good candidates or only good proposals, or the choice between 5 great proposals, you're already in a better position to not care whether it's one person, one vote. So if you've got just a yes, no vote, like here's your only option, you can either vote for Brexit or not, then you're already in a poor position versus, okay, here are 3 potential proposals for the separation between the UK and the rest of the continent, right? And then you're like, oh, I like proposal 1 better than proposal 2. So just the yes, no vote itself already is extremely limiting. And the process by which that proposal came on the table is also part of democracy.
Yeah, fair. It's I quite agree. Makes me wonder, well, with that process being part of it, how do you go about that, right? Who filters that? That would be very hard to do in a non-centralized way, I figure.
For something, I mean, it's, you know, could you imagine that if you were like Ocean Protocol or Fetch AI, and we're like, listen, we want 3 proposals on the table. And so here is negotiation group 1 and negotiation group 2 and negotiation group 3. And you've got to negotiate with each one of these groups. And then we're going to put the proposal on the table. And then we're going to have ranked voting. I mean, they would just be like, really? Like, we're not doing that, right? So it's not that I don't understand the problem. I understand the problem.
Walter, you have your hand up.
So, you know, governance voting mechanics to me is problematic in that by the time you're talking about how you're tallying votes, and this is sort of parallel to what Grace is saying, how the not just individual proposals get there, but the overall agenda of what's for discussion, what's being sort of what the focus of the back and forth is is, in my experience, set very centrally. I mean, when I worked at Gitcoin, it was all nice and peachy, except when it came down to super important stuff, and then whatever Kevin said went. It's kind of like, after all, it's, you know, how people say that, okay, there are these governance attacks, and I have seen the same pattern always, is that there is a singular threat to governance, and that's the founder. It's always the same scenario. It's always a white guy, and it's always like, no, well, my experience, I only know like half a dozen cases. And when push comes to shove, when stakes are high and their personal whatever finances are front and center, they make a singular decision and it's done. You know, no discussion, no nothing. So that to me is a much bigger problem, or is the central problem, compared to how specific votes are tallied for a specific proposal.
That turns the big question in how do you prevent that problem, right? I mean, I'm not sure if you have a suggestion there, but
Of course, it's because basically they still have retained all the actual power. You know, there is the mechanics for discussing a proposal, but what's even up for discussion, and you know what happens when the truly major decisions. It's like, I remember even before the hugest decisions about, you know, transforming entities and so on, but even just like one day, oh, and we just talked about, and here is the mission and value statement for the organization. Right? It's just like, okay, we're like this big DAO thing, but oh, by the way, here is the list of the mission and values for you guys. I mean, to me, that was so, how should I say it? Not cool. And they didn't even perceive the gap. They truly figured not only that they owned the thing, but that they were the thing, that amongst themselves, they just declare, you know, mission and values. So that's how you do it. Basically, you truly go to the organization and you truly find out what it is that they're interested in, and, you know, the range of it. And then you trust them and you do it for them, you know? If people in charge are truly like providing a service to organization, then they wouldn't do this. It's kind of obvious, right? That if you see the organization as separate from yourself and something you're in service of, then the rest will fall out naturally.
I think there's a number of things that you pointed at here. Like, one is this thing about like the power dynamic of the people who are in control and people whatever. And I think it's something that you need to be really aware of. So for example, on the task force, so Daniel and Johnny and I are elected officials. And we're allowed to call on other people. So Nick and Judith and Esther are people that we called upon, but they're not elected officials, right? And Peter, I don't know how Peter is the head of the town hall, but he is an employee of the foundation, right? And so he sets the agenda here. And so we were really careful, like Daniel and I took a lot of the brunt, or all the brunt of stuff. We were really careful not to include Esther, for example, in any of our conversations because she's an employee of the foundation. We were careful not to include Judith in any of our conversations because she's an ambassador and she has a status with you guys that we want her to be able to not take responsibility for what we as elected people said. And we didn't want anybody else to take any of the negative consequences of the views that they may or may not agree with myself and Daniel. Now, in this case, it was super easy to negotiate. If we had had a supervisory council of 7 people, I don't know if we would have been able to come out with a statement. Right? Daniel and I have a a relationship that goes beyond being elected together. We're super fortunate that we were elected together, or maybe it's these are the style of leaders that you guys wanted. And Johnny's been sick for quite a long time. He's okay. He came back to our council this week, but he's been undergoing some health problems. And so it's like only 2 people had to decide to put out a statement. Now that's not great for democracy, by the way. On the other hand, when you elect a president of a country, that's only 1 and they don't have to, right, consult. So it still was 2 people. But there is this weird conflict of interest, right? Like, who can we tell about what we're talking about? And then who sets the agenda for the ambassadors and the deep funding and the whatever? And you as a community, for example, we didn't hear anybody reach out to us and say, can you come to the town hall meeting and do an AMA with us, right? And Peter did that as the organizer of the town hall meeting, but it isn't obvious that he would do that, right? And so you guys need to be responsible for at least knowing we as the ambassadors are led by somebody who is a foundation employee. He sets the agenda. He's very fair and decent, but we might have to ask him, right? And not put him in an uncomfortable, I like Peter says, like, he doesn't seem to be an uncomfortable, but you guys as ambassadors have a responsibility to Peter as the steward of this to, you know, like to say to him, are you feeling uncomfortable about this? Do we need to support you in this? Do we need to not put all of this responsibility on you for setting the agenda? Or come directly to us as the supervisory council and say, we want you to show up as the AMA. And these are not, it's not like I'm telling you what to do, but I'm just saying there's a really important awareness of the power dynamics within the organization that as a community, you need to be supportive of your stewards. And I think that there was, that could have been done slightly more elegantly in your case, and probably in our case, we were in a very awkward position.
Well,
Okay,
sorry.
so can I say something? Hi, Grace. Thank you for being here. So, in regards of a lot of the things you're putting on Peter's back, we discussed them as a community. So the idea of bringing you guys in an AMA, it was something that we discussed in December. How we can make our town halls more so different, not repetitive, and get on touch with you guys from the Supervisory Council, or as having Haley here with Esther last week presenting their initiative. It's something that we discuss. But Peter is the branch that communicates. It doesn't matter if he's an employee of the foundation. He's well, more than nothing. And again, this is personally, and I promised that I was not going to open my mic today, but I would. I have. But listen. So the thing is that he really, my personal take, like Jan or like Haley here, they represent the vision and mission because they're strong committed. At least that's what my perception, my human part is telling me that, not the professional aspect of there being driving sometimes the bus, having to present results, have accountability, all those things that are part of being in charge of our endeavor. The human aspect is that they really are committed to it, and they have not only expressed it, they breathe that. So so we discuss these things as a community members, you know. And so I respond to Daniel on our deep funding Telegram. It was a wider scope on the SNet community, too many people, and I didn't want to argue. My take is that when you make a statement, if you are representing a community, okay, you need to involve that community before you put a statement out, because if you're talking in behalf of a community, you need to get the people. Voting somebody is not only allowed somebody to talk to others, you know. At least that's my take of representation. I know, and I have now I'm reading the last blueprint, and I'm going to spend some time because I know that that's your expertise, and we need that blueprint to get stronger as a community. But in this idea of making a decision, the foundation that is still not a DAO, a business-oriented, with a challenge that bringing more computing scalability to our endeavors, because we need to reach an objective, something that probably exceeds a team of individuals. It brings the people that have been taking the challenges and making the decisions before. So my response on the Telegram chat was not trying to present a conflictive position. It's like, we voted you guys to bring this blueprint. Probably it was a misunderstanding of the responsibilities, you know, as a supervisory council. What are you there? You know, you're a cook. You're a cook.
Yeah. You know, this is a really legitimate perspective, what you're bringing, Guillermo. And I know you're not the only person who feels like we, as the supervisory council, made a statement that doesn't represent your opinion. Now, obviously, we as the supervisory council can't make any statement that would represent everybody's opinion. Like, it's just not possible, right? And we really welcome that feedback. And the same thing like the statement we put out today with the foundation. We think these are legitimate perspectives. We have a perspective that democracy is the most important thing, and that without democracy, you can't get beneficial technology. It's not limited to AGI, right? That's what we believe. Is it true? Maybe, right?
Yeah,
And Ben has a legitimate perspective that, like, you're not going to get any AGI at all if everything goes through a democratic process. It's never going to move anywhere. Is that true? Maybe, right? You as the community get to see these different perspectives. In terms of what we did put out as our perspective, I would say it's not that it necessarily represents what the community thinks in terms of we believe that democracy is first, or we believe that whatever is first, right? What we think it represents is the effect that it will have on the community's rights to speak up in the future. So right now the community is voting on a constitution that hasn't been publicized. So that this vote is going to be a binding vote on the constitution that is being written now by the foundation and being approved by the other two members of the token merger. Now, I believe in the goodwill of the foundation. We have had really amicable conversations. I believe in their good intentions. I am absolutely not saying that there's any negative intention here. However, I do believe that if I'm going to vote yes or no, I should see the text of the Constitution, right? And it's taking away your rights in some way. That's my belief. Again, I'm not saying it's really true. I'm just saying my belief is that it's potentially taking away your rights to due process. And the fact that there wasn't a 1 week or 1 day really response time for the community to give its input to this, I believe it's taking away some rights that you should have. Now, you might say, that's BS. We never got those rights. It's not really a DAO. Grace is out of her mind. So I'm not necessarily representing your opinion, what Daniel and I wrote. It's much more representing what we think the effect on you will be. And you might say, that's acceptable to us. We don't mind. We don't want to have, like, we don't want to look through merger agreements like, thank you very much, right? We trust Ben. We trust Jan, we trust these people with good intentions. And that is, like I said, I think they have good intentions too. And so all we're presenting is how we think this will affect you and not whether you really think that that's a good or bad effect. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Grace. And thank you for speaking up on the decision of communicating. Again, this is not presenting a conflict of interest. It's sharing ideas, and now I understand better what was the idea behind statement. Probably it's something that, you know, communication is always the subject of the thing. You know, how you communicate is probably more important of what you communicate. So thank you for being up for the discussion. I understand.
Walter, I do see your hand, but I do want to make a tiny comment on the previous remark, like me leading the town hall and determining the agenda. That's very much not my intention at all, and I do want to make that very clear. It's very much open to input of anybody to suggest any topic for agendas of town hall, and I'm also in itself, just very happy to have other people chair the town hall, if there's such a thing as chairing it. But yeah, just wanted to add that for a bit of context there. Yeah, Walter.
So I'd like to offer my perspective. I view this as purely a commercial transaction between incorporated entities that are each token funded and thus are fully in. So, for example, very recently, the foundation reincorporated from, what was it, Spain or Ireland or somewhere, to Zug to Switzerland. We didn't vote on that because there was nothing to vote on. It's a commercial entity doing its business. And so the fact that some people get to say something publicly about it is all nice and good. And maybe it is a bit of decentralization theater, so I don't even personally go there. To me, it's purely a commercial transaction, and as such, I don't trust them to do the right thing. I just expect that, given their very large personal interest, they will take care of the thing that, in a way that works for everyone. So to me, so I don't have to struggle with that thing. As a matter of fact, I kind of call these DAOs, as pre-token and post-token. And when the likes of, a number of attempts have been made to basically decentralize an existing corporate entity, including Gitcoin. And to me, it's always the same scenario. It basically never ends up a grassroots, broadly distributed DAO. All of the entire power structure built on history and just pure name recognition remains. So whatever. I'm yet to see any scenario that has any semblance of. Now, going back to something even more sort of even trickier, is there is a belief system that decentralization is a positive, and that's mythology of cryptocurrencies that arose in opposition to cypherpunks, so-called, from two decades back, being sort of institution, anti-government, which is a different struggle to me. And so we do have a belief that democratic processes have merit, even though, as we well know, we have a republic, not a democracy. There hasn't been a true democracy ever. It's just not a practical thing. And some old white guys getting together in Athens wasn't a democracy either. Whatever. But I think if the goal is positive, inclusive outcomes, then we should pursue that. And always question, is chopping the organization in a bunch of small pieces actually helping? Is this kind of voting system actually helping? Because we all seem to feel that these processes slow us down and yet don't necessarily produce better decisions. So I would very much love to work with people on this, to shift away from these declarative decentralization or even democratizing, which to me is a worthier goal, and instead, are we actually helping make the world a better place? Start with that as the North Star, and then derive everything else.
Any replies to that?
You're making us all silent, Walter. But very good statements. In fact, at the beginning, one of the topics we discussed is what is the goal of decentralization? You probably remember, Grace. And is it more about democracy, or is it about resilience of the organization? So I can imagine a situation where decision making is maybe not improved, but the organization becomes more resilient. For instance, against governance interference. So yeah, that's already where the discussion starts. And personally, I see decentralization as a journey, which probably will never end. I feel that in deep funding, I'm at the very beginning of it. There's so many options. It can become very complex. And we also, Walter, had discussions on reputation, what Haley was also discussing about before. And yeah, you really had me doubting at some point. I was building this cathedral of wonderful algorithms and etc. And yeah, you asked the same question. Does it actually help you make better decisions? And yeah, I think sometimes it does, hopefully, or it will. Maybe in the future, we're not there yet. Maybe not for everything. So it's an ongoing search and exploration. And in this time, yeah, we have new options, we have new tools, we have new technology, we have new challenges also. So yeah, I think we have an obligation to continue searching. I'm not sure how long this ambassador meeting usually takes, if it's on the clock. But if that is the case, I want to make sure that I want to make one statement here. And you know, there seems to be a lot of adversity on the channels. To be honest, today I haven't been on Telegram or these channels. I just didn't have the time. But from a personal perspective, I want to say that the collaboration between me, and I think Peter will agree, with the Supervisory Council and the wider task force, I enjoyed every minute of it. And I think we had valuable discussions, and I think we will continue to do so. And what I like about you, Grace, is you're not a pleaser. You say it as it is. And I respect that. And I actually kind of like that. It's not always the most comfortable thing, but I like it. And I think what I really appreciate is that we always keep the door to conversation open. And I think we can always continue on a constructive, in our constructive relationship. So we can have hard discussions, but there's never a closed door in that discussion. So I want to thank you for that, always continuing being open-minded in that. And I hope we can continue our discussions on this topic, not just until the end of the blueprint, but also far beyond that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, and I agree. Like it's always been very amicable and very productive. We definitely feel that we wish that we had not had to put out a statement before having like the joint statement. And that was a result of feeling that we weren't being heard as a community, and we weren't being heard in what we said. And so I feel like there's been a really significant improvement in our communication. And I think that's always the case. If you've ever worked with someone or married someone or given birth to someone, like your mutual understanding doesn't come through the things that you agree about. It comes through a crisis, and it comes through getting through that crisis together in a constructive way. And that's the only way you deepen. Like somebody's like, no, I'm really serious this time. And you're like, yeah, right. And then they walk out the door, right? And they're like, oh, they really were serious. You know? And it's only through those types of interactions that we really actually get deeper trust, because you want to know that you're going to stick together even after having those conflicts. And I feel like that has been a really good process. and being, you know, and again, there's some parts that I wish were a little bit less public, but fundamentally, yeah, I am a big transparency person. I don't think anybody, you know, I'm not here for the money. I'm here because I think that these technologies are critical. And when you talked about better decisions, I think that there's a real big problem in our society today, which SingularityNet has the intention of addressing, which is that these big tech companies do not have our interests at heart. They have money at heart, if they have a heart. And they don't have our best interests. And I think that because of the way that we operate within a token economics environment, there are people who are involved in this community to whom there's a responsibility to have those tokens have the value that they want in the future. So if they want to use those tokens for services that we provide, we have an obligation to provide the services, and we have an obligation to keep the value of those tokens representative of the AGI services that they want to get in the future, because they are utilities. And so we have a responsibility to those people who are looking at this from a very different perspective than I am, which is an ethics and safety perspective. And so there is a tension, and it's a natural tension between like moving fast, being to the market first, providing the services that we promised to people who want AGI. And there's another conflict of like, wait, let's slow down and let's provide safety and let's provide ethics. And the only way, for me at least, to provide ethics is to make sure it's not decided by a small cabal of people. Let's make sure we have committees that are actually making decisions and not just advising, right? Right now, Supervisory Council gives advice, but we can't say, stop, that's dangerous. There's no function yet in the ecosystem that says, wait, that's really a danger, and you have to stop it. Like, there's no binding agreement. Now, should there be, and at what point should there be, and what should it look like to have some sort of body that isn't just an advisory council, but like really a like, stop, this could be dangerous council? I don't know if that's even a good idea, but I do know that we are talking about very high risks to humanity here, risks to the planet, you know, and so I tend to stand on the side of let's be careful rather than let's go to market. And that's not a correct perspective, it's just a perspective, right? And so when you talk about making better decisions, you can never know. If you said, listen, let me not go there because it could be dangerous and I might get mugged or whatever, like just a personal safety. Like, I don't want to go out tonight because like it looks a little sketchy out there, right? You don't know if you saved yourself from getting mugged, right? And so you can never know if it was a better decision to stop, let's say, development of some particular technology because your safety council said so. It may always look in retrospect like a stupid decision because you don't know what you prevented. And so it's a really, these are really difficult questions when you say, what is even a better decision? Like, what does better mean? And like, did I actually prevent this tragedy, or could we have gone there anyway? You know, so these aren't easy questions. And I do feel like these very open debates, like I think that one thing that we did accomplish as a community, the Supervisory Council and the Foundation together, and you as the ambassadors and the deep funding, is we've pushed the boundaries of what we can safely talk about out. We've increased our ability to disagree with each other. We've increased our ability to talk about difficult topics, and that in and of itself is a tremendous accomplishment. And so I really appreciate the partnership that Jan has provided and the other foundation members have provided to be willing to be with these very difficult conversations, because this is only the first of many ethics conversations that this community is going to need to have. And I really do want to emphasize what Jan said, like, we may or may not continue to be part of this community, but I want you as the ambassadors to know you are safe bringing up these difficult topics with the foundation. They are open to these conversations. They may not change their mind ever. Like you can see in the document that we published, they didn't change their mind about anything. but they also didn't throw us out the door. They didn't badmouth us. They didn't make us feel uncomfortable. It was a totally respectful conversation, and all of you can feel safe that you can bring up difficult conversations in this environment. And I just want, I want everybody to understand that. I think it's incredibly important for democracy. It's a huge accomplishment.
Thanks for that. I fully agree, and I'm happy to hear you say it. I mean, yeah, that's not much value of me agreeing there, of course, from foundation side, but yeah, I do agree with that. It's also, yeah, what to say. I don't know. It's a very complex process in a way. I do feel from my side that supervisory council is kind of sometimes working under the assumption that we are a fully functioning DAO already. That has been something which I found tricky to deal with, because we're not yet. Yeah, what to say? I think it's just one of the steps in a long process, and I did see some remarks on channels where you kind of didn't seem to have any confidence we would be continuing towards further progressive decentralization. I can only strongly not agree with that, I have to say. But yeah.
I have serious doubts, and I'll be really frank, because our mandate is ending, and there's absolutely no continuity plan. And Daniel and I have personally discussed that if we're asked to do a proper handover, we will do that. But there's no plan to continue the supervisory council, and the way that this was handled in general doesn't make me optimistic. I hope you're right, Peter. This is too important for us to ignore, but I'm not optimistic. But again, it's just my opinion, right? Like, I only sound really authoritative because I have a lot of media training.
Walter, go for it.
Well, it's not entirely true that there will be no continuity. For example, I've been collecting all the videos and documents generated and put them into a chat interface through, OpenAI's GPT's mechanism. So no, we're very much are paying attention and planning to leverage all the work. So no, I mean, please, Grace, we actually do care about, okay, I personally very much care about your personal contribution.
Thank you so much.
I think I spoke early in the meeting, Grace, I'm not sure you were in yet, about our reputation weighted voting system that we're in progress of building and designing and creating to bring as a proposal for the community, because this is one of the things that kicked off the conversation. I think you did start in with run one person, one vote, one token, one so is so inadequate. We have so many decentralization initiatives happening simultaneously in SingularityNet. We've got Deep, we've got the ambassadors, we've got SingCom DAO. These are three modes of decentralization, because decentralization is inseparable from SingularityNet. Ben started it on blockchain, not because that's convenient, but because he recognizes, both for his and his team's safety and for the good of the world, that AGI cannot have an off switch. It must be owned and controlled decentrally by the broadest swath of humanity possible. If there is an off switch, he and his family and his team will be taken over by a hostile big tech or a government. So it's impossible for us not to decentralize. It's the twin priorities of SingularityNet: to decentralize and develop AGI. And one without the other is not possible.
I think let's agree to disagree from Gracer's side, which is also fine to have. Walter, that's a new hand, right?
So to me, the centralized versus decentralized is a perspective that's kind of limiting. I would rather take the commercial versus public benefit perspective, and you can see this drama play out on a much larger scale, between the two sides of OpenAI and Elon complaining and throwing it easy. So indeed, a relationship between public benefit, which we sometimes call nonprofit, and straight up, commercial venture funded art is not a happy relationship. And I think if one was aware of it up front, one could have constructed that. But, like the spin-off of the commercial thing was never done properly. And in other places, like when some oil company funds a Save the World Foundation, we're always a little leery about what's up with that, right? So combining those two approaches has to be done sort of with a little, I think it's suspect. I'm not saying it's not possible.
All right. Just remember Jan's earlier question. Usually we do try and stick to the time. It's now 15 minutes past. I'm not quite sure if what to do here. At least there's no immediate next meeting lined up, so we can continue if you want to. I also, in a way, this discussion feels a bit more important than being very strict on time. Let's put it like that. I do want to respect your time, though. I think it's awesome you're all here and sharing and listening in.
It's not like you're running a tape to record it.
My hard drive disagrees. Maybe, well, first of all, I see a hand. I will go to that, and then maybe have a quick check on a bit more final-ish comments. Soundwaves, go for it.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to be as clear as I can be here. Hopefully, Peter and Guillermo and Clement know what I'm talking about from our earlier meeting. I come from a long line of translation between different levels of experience and different levels of people. Decentralized and centralized. I love it. I love the topic. I love the idea of implementing it into everything we do with future tech. But my opinion, I believe that we will have to use both. And the reason for this is because certain sides of the system should use centralized, models, and the other side should use decentralized. And specifically speaking, say you have a identity, not digital, just real life on paper. The U.S. government has a copy of that to know who you are. Well, that's one system. Another system is money, to make that money here, right? We got to give them something to show them we're making money. Well, now if we carry it into the digital realm, the government loves the digital realm. We start to pull back a little bit and realize, hey, we're giving away a lot more information in the digital realm. And that forces a lot of us to understand we need more privacy, or we need to look out more for ourselves in a privacy mindset. And as we start to build our own private identities and collect these different, models that work for us, that third-party companies are using to get you on board. I've got all this information that's my own personal information, and when I sign up with someone, it's as much personal information as I will give them. But if I can use a digital identity, which is still me, I would rather use the digital identity for their system. And that's where decentralized will come, firsthand, is that it's to protect my identity personally. But now let's incorporate it into today's topic. One vote, one token, one vote. It's important to trust each other. And we can't just talk to each other, because that takes a lot of time, especially when you don't communicate well. So we're sort of pushing further and faster as much as we can by staying here. Let's go ahead and establish some sort of system, something we're calling KYC, that will allow us to create this digital identity to use as a one vote for the system, for our process. The only way I kind of come, I guess, not a fix, but the only thing I can think of that would sort of go in that direction, and it would solve our issue, would be, instead of creating our own what's so-called app or wallet that forces people to create their own address, we implement open source. And we create an application that can possibly be adopted universally. And when I mean possibly, I mean, if it's put out there open source, like OpenAI did from the beginning, and changed their ways over time. But anyway, if they push out as being open, then everybody can use it to create this identity, this digital identity, thus getting that 27 character long token, that character long address. And the open source app will still communicate with the same systems as merchants, payment processing merchants do, but it all will use our digital identity. It will never use our personal information to compare. And that's what I think we should implement, or at least might help us further. Forgive me for taking the end of the meeting. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks for sharing. And I do think you're quite spot on. I could see that happening for sure. The question remains whether we should. I don't think, let's put it like that, we should do this in-house. I mean, this kind of needs a global implementation, right? So yeah, having a dedicated system for that, to me, makes more sense than all kind of parties having their own in-house. I mean, maybe these are the start of later a global system, who knows? Yeah, it kind of feels weird to wrap this up, because I mean, I didn't have the illusion at the beginning of this call that we would get to like a nice, well-rounded conclusion, and we all lived happily ever after. It was mostly intended to facilitate a bit of sharing, and yeah, I think that did happen. I do want to put a quick check on the room if anybody has basically some final remarks for, at least for now, to add to the conversation.
I just want to let you guys know that we are working on the reputation section. We are aware of the work that you guys are doing, and we will be making additional additional recommendations around the specifications. As I put in the chat, I spent all of today's working on specifications for a reputation system for another project, but it will be open source and available to others. So I think this is a really worthy conversation, and it's something that we will address on Blueprint for you guys.
Well, just to not make people panic, I will post the chat file of this meeting in the just in the Ambassador General chat, so you can find the links there. Also, you can find them in chat indeed now. Anyone else? I see Jan sitting up.
No. I was just working on the chat. Yeah, sounds like a really interesting document, but also a little bit of a long one. And I'm a slow reader with not too much time. So, but really interesting. We'll look into it.
All right. I do think that, yeah, kind of makes it a wrap for now. I will put a reminder to, if you haven't voted already, do vote, whatever you are voting. Make yourself heard. And yeah, again, thanks all for being here and yeah, sharing the time. And hope to see you on one of the many upcoming community calls we've got going.
Thank you very, very much for doing this, Peter. It was a great meeting.
Most welcome.
Having